Thank you, Matt and Sarah, for your dialogue a few minutes ago. And Matt, especially thank you for sharing your story with us. It's pretty incredible. An owl really is one of the most amazing, informative, and life-saving things that we as Unitarian Universalists do, isn't it? And man, there are a lot of adults who need some basic owl courses. I can't help but think of the legislators who suggested that a pregnant person might be able to swallow a camera to look at how the fetus was progressing. That happened. Or the Ohio bill that was put forth that required doctors to re-implant an ectopic pregnancy. FYI, neither of these are possible due to biology. Sadly, Indiana, which has the third highest rate of maternal mortality in the nation, is not immune to restrictive bills that do not take medical science into consideration. Under Indiana law that just went into effect on August 1st, so just 6 months ago, abortions are only allowed under 3 conditions, one of which being if the pregnant person's health or life is at risk. But there's no medical guidance for providers as to what that means. What are the criteria by which they can determine if someone's health or life is at risk? Here and around the country where this phrase is being put into abortion bans, doctors wonder which threats are serious enough to absolve them of legal risk. Notably, wherever you see these restrictive abortion bans, you will see a male-dominated legislature. In Indiana, only 27% of the General Assembly identify as women, far lower than the 50% of the population that women make up. Outside of the legislature, 77% of anti-abortion leaders are men. People with uteruses are tired of having their access to health care dictated primarily by cisgender white men. And so men are often told to sit down and shut up and listen when it comes to the abortion debate. But this begs the question, what is the role of men, specifically cisgender men, in conversations about reproductive rights? Should they, you, sit down and shut up and follow the lead of people with uteruses? Should they, you, be allies with women and uterus havers? Or maybe are those of you who are cisgender men actually impacted by issues of reproductive rights? And might you have a place working with women and people with uteruses, not as supporters, but as stakeholders as well? I'll give you a hint. It's that last one. But more on that in just a minute. Let's get some definitions on the table so that we're all on the same page. First, let's talk about gender. I'm going to talk a lot about cisgender men in the next few minutes. Cisgender means that your gender corresponds with the sex that you were assigned at birth. So if you were assigned male at birth and still identify as a man, you are a cisgender man. The reason I am talking primarily about cisgender men is because trans men can and do get pregnant. And when that happens, finding reproductive health care is even more dangerous and difficult than it is for people who identify as women. Trans men are very much stakeholders when it comes to reproductive rights. I also want to define the difference between an ally and a stakeholder. Allies advocate for groups of which they are not a part. So white people can be allies to Black, Indigenous people of color. Straight people can be allies to people who are LGBTQIA+. Now, a A stakeholder in healthcare specifically is someone with a vested interest in a particular decision. This includes both patients and their caregivers. The point that I want you to take away today is that cisgender men are not just allies when it comes to reproductive rights. Y'all are stakeholders as well. You have a vested interest. While it may not always be appropriate for you to take the lead, we need you in this fight. Let's take a look at how reproductive rights impact cisgender men. So first, cisgender men are stakeholders in reproductive right issues because you are caregivers. You are partners, friends, siblings, lovers, fathers. Did you know that 20% of cisgender men have had an experience of their partner ending their pregnancy and abortion? There are often emotional and spiritual issues and questions that come up for all partners whenever a pregnancy is terminated, and sometimes physical issues as well. In 2022, Andrew Glick's wife, Yennefer, was killed by the Texas abortion ban. She had a medically risky pregnancy, but due to the ban, her healthcare providers never even brought up the topic of abortion, and she died as a result. Yennefer was definitely impacted, but so was her family, so was her husband. Men are not immune from the emotional, spiritual, and physical results of decisions as they accompany their partners through a pregnancy. In addition to being caregivers, cisgender men can be directly impacted by their partner's choice of whether or not to terminate a pregnancy. One study found that among cisgender men involved in a pregnancy before the age of 20, those whose partner had an abortion were more likely to have graduated from college compared to those whose partner gave birth. Some said abortion made it possible for them to continue their education or employment goals and to take the time to evaluate whether this was the relationship that they most wanted to have a lifelong connection with. And we know that when someone is able to continue their education and graduate, they're more likely to be able to remain employed, to earn more money over the course of a lifetime, and generally will have a higher standard of living. Now, the study was clear to point out that this is a connection, not a causation. But again, it is worth paying attention to. Reproductive rights also include access to and accurate information about contraception. There are horror stories all over social media about cisgender men taking their partner's birth control pills and wondering then why their partner ended up pregnant. While the burden of contraception all too often falls disproportionately on those of us with uteruses, cisgender men are stakeholders, not just passive observers in this aspect of reproductive rights. If a cisgender man does not want to be a father, he should have access to methods of contraception to prevent that and not have to rely on a uterus-having partner. Though they are still illegal in some countries, believe it or not, in the United States, other than condoms, not condoms. This is a poorly worded sentence, I apologize. I'm gonna take this time, can I switch to the pulpit mic? I am having an issue with how this is sounding today. Thank you. All right, that just feels a little less stressful for me, thank you. Okay, so let's try this sentence again. So condoms are the primary form of contraception that men use. And the secondary form of contraception that cisgender men use is vasectomies, which are illegal in some countries. Not surprisingly, as a result of overturning abortion rights, there has been a large increase in the number of vasectomies that have been performed in the last few years, especially in states like Missouri, which are also looking to limit access to contraception. On the flip side of contraception, not only are Viagra and other erectile dysfunction medications considered gender-affirming care, they can also be considered support for fertility. While there were reports in the past that ED medications could potentially damage sperm or reduce sperm motility, a more recent review of the relevant research has concluded that these medications can actually have a positive effect on fertility by helping someone gain and maintain erections and reducing the stress associated with erectile dysfunction. Men, cisgender men, are stakeholders in reproductive rights because all people have the right to determine when and how to have children and when not to. Another aspect of reproductive rights is the prevention and treatment of sexually transmitted infections, STIs. Almost 1/4 of cisgender men are sexually active by the age of 15. So not only are they at risk for unplanned pregnancies for much of their lives, which, as we saw a moment ago, can impact their future, they are also at risk for STIs that could impact their current health and well into the future. These diseases can affect people of all ages and backgrounds and can have severe consequences if left untreated. The Centers for Disease Control estimate that at this moment, 1 in 5 Americans has an active STI. As caregivers and as patients themselves, cisgender men are stakeholders, not just allies, in conversations about reproductive rights. So that begs the question then, why aren't there more cisgender men involved in these conversations? Well, for one, it is true, absolutely, that women and people who have uteruses have been so tired of having their health care dictated to them by undereducated, misinformed, white, heterosexual, cisgender men in legislatures that we sometimes go overboard and tend to tell all men to sit down and shut up. That definitely happens. I may have said it myself a time or two. But I don't think that's actually the main or even primary reason that there aren't more specifically heterosexual cisgender men involved in conversations and activism around reproductive rights. I think it's patriarchy. And here's why. So please bear with me on all the air quotes you're about to see. Under patriarchy, traditionally masculine qualities are valued more than traditionally feminine ones. Pregnancy, childbirth, and childcare are among the most feminine of issues. Under patriarchy, boys are raised, enculturated to fear and shun the feminine. They are given soldiers instead of baby dolls, are told not to throw like a girl, taught not to cry or show emotions. There are so many ways that the feminine is weaponized against boys and men. So the message from the patriarchy is that it is unmanly for men to be involved in pregnancy or childbirth or childcare. Under patriarchy, a heterosexual cisgender man's role in reproduction has come to be limited to having sex and providing sperm. Now, thankfully, we have come a long way in the last 50 years on this issue. Men are encouraged now to be in the labor room supporting their partners as they give birth. But the bar is still too low. Like when fathers take their kids to the park and are told what good dads they are for babysitting their children. Patriarchy hurts everyone. And it reinforces the notion that reproductive rights are primarily for women and those of us with uteruses. As if by fighting for reproductive rights, a person's man card could suddenly be revoked. So, let's all trample the patriarchy together, shall we? Here are some ways that all of us can claim our collective stakeholder status in the area of reproductive rights on the personal, the organizational, and the policy levels. On the personal level, as with most things, It starts with education. Listen, listen, listen. I particularly encourage men to join or follow organizations like Men for Choice and the Emerge Lab. And when we offer Adult Owl, please sign up for it. If you are feeling pretty confident about the reproductive rights framework that I have discussed in part here, you can dig into the reproductive justice framework, which takes all of this into account and adds racial, cultural, and socioeconomic lenses. It expands. Racial justice takes reproductive rights and takes a much more intersectional look at it. Cisgender men with partners capable of getting pregnant can also take this issue out of the shadows and talk to your friends about your abortion experiences and birth control methods. And if your partners carry most of the burden for birth control, cisgender heterosexual men might consider getting a vasectomy if that is an option for where they are in their lives. Men can also write letters to the editor stating their unequivocal support for reproductive rights and how men are also stakeholders. So often those letters are just from women. And for those of us who have enough money to give, we can donate money to organizations like the All Options Hoosier Abortion Fund, Planned Parenthood, and NARAL, or sign up to transport people who are going across state lines for controversial reproductive health care. And if someone is in a state where abortion is still legal, they might consider volunteering as an escort. Organizationally, any of us might want to join the reproductive justice team here at UUI. Last I checked, it was all people who identify as women. Or help us work to get OWL offered here in Indianapolis in the next few years. Adult OWL, as Sarah told you, there are 3 levels of Adult OWL. It's awesome. At places of employment, we can work for equitable parental leave policies and have the expectation that it won't just be mothers who take time off when the kids are sick. In the area of policy, we exist in a society where decision-making power and earning power continue to be dominated by white cisgender men. Before Roe v. Wade was overturned, at the election level, abortion was considered a niche women's issue and often viewed as tangential to major elections. We might have in the past chosen to vote for somebody who agreed with us in most ways, no matter what their stance on reproductive justice might have been. But now that abortion policy has been returned to the states and has reshaped political races around the country, male voters' opinions about abortion are crucial to the outcome. Let those running for office know that their stance on abortion and reproductive rights is critical to earning your support and that you believe that reproductive health care is a right for everyone. And while we're at it, let's get a little more diversity in public office. Did you see that the City Council for St. Paul made history? Last fall, all 7 City Council seats were up for grabs, and all were won by female candidates below the age of 40, representing various races, cultures, sexual orientations, and economic abilities. In 2019, Nevada became the first state with a majority women state legislature. And today, women make up 62% of the Nevada state legislature, the largest percentage of any state. No matter your gender, reproductive rights are for all of us. We are all stakeholders. We all deserve to be able to make our own decisions about our bodies, to access sexual and reproductive health services, to decide if we want to have children and how many and with whom and when, and to get accurate information about all of these issues. May we work together at the personal, organizational, and policy levels to ensure these rights for all. May it be so. May we make it so.